Welcome to Agape is Love, and thank you for joining us. We are a new evolving ministry, a unity community. Our outreach is a ministry of people for people, people who lovingly serve others in outreach to educate, promote, and provide opportunities for spiritual and community development. We are excited to share this edition of our service with you. Please leave us comments, like, share, and spread the word.
Thank you for joining me today. My talk is about Don't Tell Me It's Impossible. So our story begins with a young lady sitting in a class, and she's coloring a picture of a whale. And all the class is coloring the same picture, and the teacher's walking around talking to them about whales and different whales and the facts about whales. And as the teacher walks by the young lady, she sees the young lady drawing a picture of a man being swallowed by her whale. And the teacher leans in and says, "Young lady, it's impossible for whales to swallow people." And the little girl just looked up and she said, And she looked back down and she started drawing some more. So the teacher circles the classroom one more time and she comes back by and she's still drawing this man being swallowed by the whale. And the teacher's starting to get upset and she looks in and she says, "Hey, young lady, I told you it's physically impossible for a whale to swallow a human." And the little girl, undaunted, looks up and she goes, well, I guess then when I get to heaven, I'll have to ask Jonah. By now, the teacher's pretty upset. She looks at her and she goes, "So, what if Jonah went to hell?" And the little girl looks up and she goes, "Well, then I guess you'll have to ask him." I love that, right? Kids are great. Kids are great. So that was just to kick off here. I'd like to share with you my daily word. The one I picked today was August 5th, 2018. And the word for today is potential. Said in truth, my spiritual potential is unlimited. The word potential is defined as the inherent capacity for coming into being. In a sense, I embrace the spiritual potential that defines my own being. Whatever limits may appear as this day unfolds, I remember that these are merely expressions of my human consciousness. Spirit is my only truth. Each day offers rich opportunities to deny power to ideas of limitation and remember the spiritual truth that Paul affirmed in his letter to the Philippians. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. I allow my spiritual potential to manifest through every challenge and experience. By unleashing my divine potential, I dissolve negative energies and become an expression of pure love and infinite possibilities. And our scripture today is Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. This is the story of my life. And my life started out, and I can say that there's limitations and there's labels, right? We use those kind of back and forth. If I wanted to go back into my history and tell you about the story of Becky, I would say, abandoned, abused, neglected, all the things that come with a dysfunctional family. But those are labels that someone else has placed on me. And when I was young, I believed those labels. In fact, one of the ones I believed the most was one that came right out of my own father's mouth. You will never amount to anything. And I think that was kind of popular because I've heard other people say, I don't know what was going on at the time or how he heard this for himself, but it was something, when we did something that was out of line, you're just worthless. You'll never amount to anything. And I kind of absorbed that as a child. I mean, children do, right? So I could have taken this all in, and I did, and I brought it up into my adulthood, and I walked out into my life with it. I believed what other people told me. I accepted other people's limitations of me and labels of me, and I didn't know who I was because I didn't, and I was not modeled. I didn't understand the truth of who I was. I didn't understand my infinite possibilities, my infinite potential in my life. Because that's what we are. We are infinite potential and infinite possibilities in our life, right? Okay. So this is just part of my story. I was the middle child of 5. I had 2 older brothers. And by these 2 older brothers, it was pretty much you keep up or you get out of our way. So I was considered what you would call a tomboy. I did everything they did, but I did it better because by sure will, I was going to beat them at their own game. don't want to include me, fine, then don't include me. But guess what? I'm going to include myself because you're not going to outrun me. You're not going to outdo me anything because I'm better. Okay? And then I had my little brother and my little sister. Now, my little brother and my little sister were both born with illnesses. And so it was a challenge. I had to battle my older siblings to be a part of, and I had to nurture my younger siblings. My one brother, we called him Scotty at the time, he was born with a heart problem. And when he was 3 years old, they finally diagnosed what was going on. His heart was misshapen, and he had a hole in it. And every time it pumped, it would pump blood. He passed out a lot, and we didn't know what it was. And he was always very red-faced, and his chest was all red and everything. So at the time, which was in the late 60s, they had no cure for this. There was no open heart surgery on infants. It was basically, my mother was told that she could put him in bed, and he might make it till he's 12 or 13. Or she could let him play, and one day he would just pass on. Because he had 3 older siblings, my mother didn't want him to deny him the life that he could have, so she let him play. And it was my job with the younger ones to nurture them. So when Scotty would pass out while we were playing, for whatever reason, because he was overheated and his blood was all pumping into his body instead of where it was supposed to be in his veins, I would scoop him up and I would take him in the house. Now, mind you, he's 3 and I'm 8. So I would scoop him up and take him into the house. I would get a wet rag, wring it out, and I would wipe him all down. And when he started breathing regularly again and he opened his eyes, I would go tell my mom that he was okay. Because my mom had a hard time watching what was going on. So a lot of times, and we were left alone a lot, so a lot of times it fell on me to make sure Scotty was okay. Or if at the time I couldn't pick him up, I'd have to grab one of my older brothers to try to help me pick him up. But this was what was going on with Scotty, right? And everybody told him and labeled him as this child that would never make it, as all of us were labeled. So in his growth, he turned into, as he started growing, and he managed to maneuver past this. When he was 14, he decided that he wanted to play water polo. And my mother said, well, you have to get a note from the doctor. The doctor wouldn't write the note, so we had to take him to a cardiologist. The cardiologist took all kinds of tests and said, of course, things have changed by then, right? So took all kinds of tests. This is the late 70s, and he says, there is no hole in your heart. And it doesn't skip a beat. And it's one of the strongest hearts I've ever seen. So in his exercise, in his being able to be free, his heart actually healed itself. And it became the strongest muscle in his body. I mean, literally, the doctor said he was beating like 40 or 50 times a minute, whereas someone his age in the same, exercise would be beating 70, 80, 90 beats per minute. They said it was amazing. So this brings me to the piece that connects it to the Bible for me, is the parable of the rich ruler in Luke 18. Now, the verse that really stands out the most is the piece where it says, what is impossible for man is possible for God. So that's Luke 18:27. What is impossible for man is possible for God. Even in a day when they couldn't operate, God made it possible for this young man to live out his life and to be who he needs to be in his life, right? This 14 years old, he was making it. Well, I'm happy to tell you that just a couple days ago, he turned 58 years old. So he's still kicking it, still alive, still living his life, has a family and children all on his own, and he's an amazing young man. But in my spiritual journey, I had to learn these things. I walked out into the world, and I had to start figuring out what my truth was, because what I carried with me was the labels and the limitations that were given to me. So years ago, I found unity, and I found support groups, and I started to heal. And that is what changed the trajectory. That was where God said to me, Becky, I know you've been struggling, you've been white-knuckling it, you've been taking care of it, you were determined, but it's not determination alone. I can make it possible, and he has made it possible for me. So let's imagine that we go to sleep tonight and wake up tomorrow, And we're standing in front of the mirror, and all of our labels and all of our limitations and everything that anyone's ever said that was hurtful or told us that we would never be something or never do something has fallen away. And we are looking in the mirror at pure potential. What then would you do with your life? What then could we do? What would we feel in that moment? The excitement, the pulse of my veins right now, it's just overwhelming to think that pure potential stands there. And why don't we? Why don't we wake up in the morning and look in the mirror and say, you are pure potential. You can live in the impossible because it's made possible through God. And we know this, and we are so grateful. As true students, this is one of our truths, right? This is what we do. So you can choose every day, I can choose every day to live with my limitations, either self-imposed or otherwise. Or I can choose every day to live my life with potential, to be what I am set out to be in the world. And that is my call to ministry. That is why I'm here. I want to show other people, and I want to invite other people to live in their potential, to be that Luke 18:27. What is impossible for man is made possible by God. It is possible. So let me leave you with this affirmation that I have written. Repeat it with me. I'll say it once, and then I want you to repeat it with me. Centered in truth, my spiritual potential is unlimited. Together, centered in truth, my spiritual potential is unlimited. Please remember tomorrow morning to wake up to your spiritual potential because you deserve it. It is made possible by God.